Hello everybody, welcome to another Source Gaming discussion. Today we're going to be talking about the gameplay of Tears of the Kingdom. Now you may or may not have seen our story discussion that we did previously, but unlike that one, we will be talking a bit about just the general gameplay for around the first 30 or 40 minutes of this discussion, and then we will be talking about spoilers, stuff that you might not know. We'll make sure to say when we start talking about spoilers. Hope you enjoy today's discussion. Hi, this is present A Shadow Link, future compared to the audio you were listening to just a moment ago. This discussion was recorded a couple months ago. Regardless, I think everything that we say in this discussion still holds true to our current thoughts. Just be wary that if you watch a future Tears of the Kingdom video from us, you may have whiplash because my overall perspective on the game has changed considerably since then. Without further ado, I will flash us back a couple months ago so we can get back to the discussion.
Yeah, let's just jump right into it. I guess from a gameplay perspective, why don't we start with the power, like Link's new abilities?
Yeah, the right arm abilities.
Yeah. So, what do we think about them? Honestly, especially compared to the abilities from Breath of the Wild, these are really cool. like the abilities in Breath of the Wild kind of felt like replacements for what would normally be the items, especially the fact that the bombs were one of the abilities. But this time around, they're almost all built around the game's central mechanic, which is the nuts and bolts style building of anything you want. And it works really, really well.
Yeah, I was actually a little afraid of the new mechanics going in because I didn't really like the Sheikah Slate powers from Breath of the Wild. I thought they were fairly limited in what they could do in terms of making an interesting challenge or things around them. And generally, unless you're really into like tech and breaking the game wide open, the only one that I used for the majority of the game was the bombs.
Yeah.
But this game, so heavily focusing, especially around the Ultra Hand, the ability to manipulate any non-static object in the overworld, it kind of works really brilliantly. Because previously you could only really do that with metal objects with magnesis.
Yes.
And so it was very limited in the situations that you could do it. Usually it was only like pre-built challenges. But with Ultra Hand, you can actually make your own solutions to any problem, which is something I disagree with from people who bring up that about Breath of the Wild. I think Breath of the Wild still has a very limited amount of intended options, but just allowing you to do so much and fully facilitating that. This is the actual, like this is that philosophy brought into actuality.
Yeah, in Breath of the Wild, a lot of the unintended solutions felt more like physics exploits. So,
yes.
Taking advantage of the game's physics engine in order to launch Link or get him sent across places where he shouldn't really be, like bomb jumping and all of that stuff. Whereas in this game, because Ultra Hand gives you so much potential to, like you said, build anything, and Fuse also adds an entirely new element. Like, actually having bomb jumping be a core mechanic if you attach a bomb to your shield and like jump onto it. Like it feels far more intentional, and the shrines are just sort of designed around it. A lot of them have one like intended solution that you can see, but it has all these like side solutions that are just as viable if you can get creative enough. Or there are some that I feel like exploit the game mainly using the fusion mechanic. I have no idea if they're intended or not. Ones where like you have to hit a sign with a boulder by sticking 3 balls together and then having it go down like a winding path. But you can also just solve that by attaching one of the balls to your sword and then lobbing the sword at the sign. Or you can solve it by picking it up the ball and slamming it into a sign and then using recoil on it. Like I still think there are ways in this game where players can exploit the way the game works for some unintended solutions. but there's far more obvious like intentionality behind how a lot of the puzzles in this game are designed, with various different ways to solve it, and that's quite cool. You'll solve something in one way and find someone solved it in a completely other way, one that doesn't feel like it's cheating.
Yes. I have a special way of tackling every solution in Tears of the Kingdom, which is I take as many objects around me as I can, and I build a bridge. And that basically solves, I'd say 90% of my problems.
Just build a really long bridge and get over things. Big gap, put big bridge in the way.
Yeah.
Go up something, just put the bridge at an angle so Link can actually run up it.
Yeah.
Block a wall of fire with the bridge, hold it above you, and then use record to keep it floating there so you can run underneath it and be safe. There are a lot of solutions. It is kind of wild. I have found, though, I guess maybe it's a criticism of the Orc Trend, or maybe it's a positive of it. The game wants you to build a lot of really fancy contraptions and stuff, or these this special architecture to fit the scenario. But a lot of the time, it feels like you can get away by building really simple objects.
Yeah.
And, the popular one going around online is the flying machine, where obviously there's loads of ways to build a fan with the glider that will eventually die and stuff like that. But people have found just attaching a controller to 2 fans works just as well, requires less material, and is infinite. It doesn't die like the glider does.
I actually hate that.
Really?
I like that somebody found that, but I don't like that other people are just doing it also, because it was spread around as the most efficient way to streamline your Tears of the Kingdom experience. And it's just you're taking away some of the fun of engaging with the mechanics and building your own contraptions if all you do is just build the flying machine every time.
Yeah, I also don't think it's very good as a flying machine anyway. Every time I've built it, maybe my building just sucks, but I always find that it's a little more janky to control than just building a regular flying machine. And I have those on auto build, so I can just build build the easier to control ones whenever instead. So I don't see the need to build the little flying hover bike. But it is an example of how you can just find the solution to a lot of problems with very there's sometimes very simple ways to do it if you can be creative, I suppose.
So Fuse.
Yes.
Fuse is really interesting because Fuse has fixed one of the 2 problems with the weapon durability from Breath of the Wild that I had. The 2 problems I had in Breath of the Wild were it was after a certain point, enemy health got so large that it required several weapons to kill a single enemy that wasn't a bokoblin. So I would just avoid combat altogether.
Yeah.
And usually enemies would just kind of have bad weapons anyway, so there was even less reason to fight them.
Yeah, there's no real payoff to getting into encounters in a lot of scenarios in Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, once the enemies start getting replaced with the black variants, and especially the silver variants, it's over. You just stop fighting enemies.
Just avoid them.
The other problem I had was it prevented otherwise neat weapons from feeling cool and satisfying to obtain, because you were just going to burn them anyway.
Yeah.
And that hasn't really been addressed in this game.
It's sort of I think it's easier now in this game to get cooler weapons, especially the ones that reference other Zelda games that you can find hidden around the map. Because once you get them, they become available to buy, and they're not massively expensive. The only ones that are a bit ridiculous are the champions weapons because they still require like a certain number of diamonds and specific weapons to upgrade, and that's like way more of a hassle than it's worth, even if those weapons are really good.
Yeah, there's quite a few decent weapons that you can acquire that are one of a kind and actually really special, and so they have addressed it somewhat. But those weapons still break.
Yeah, they still break.
It still makes them feel like not it's not an amazing reward. It's just you've gained something valuable that you will lose.
Yeah, it's like a temporary power up. Although, if you're like me, you'll just put it up in Link's house and just have it on display instead of ever using it.
Yeah.
That is true. But Fuse, I think, does quite well with the weapon retention issue by just being able to fuse things to weapons to make them stronger.
Yes, and, every enemy has a horn now, and while this is very silly that all of them have gained gameplay mechanic changes, they've just been changed to suit the gameplay mechanics. It's very silly, but it works extremely well, because as you go up the tier of enemies, the horns that you get from each one become stronger. Yes. So you do actually have a guaranteed strong weapon when you actually take down a strong enemy.
Yeah. You have to be willing to use it, though, unlike me, who's a hoarder and just holds on to every pickup item and never fuses them. Because who knows what else I might need them for.
One of the biggest offenders in Breath of the Wild in terms of you only do this if you want like brownie points, you want to brag about it, are the Lynels, because they just take so much to kill, and they give you one weapon back, one bow back, if you're lucky, a shield too, and it's not overly useful to even engage with them. But in this game, they guarantee give you at least 2 weapons back because they have 2 different horns.
Yeah.
And those are the Silver Lynel has the strongest like raw materials that you can get in the game.
Yeah, as it should, because it's like the hardest enemy to beat in this game. Harder than any of the other sub-bosses or even regular bosses.
Yeah.
God, I hate fighting Lynel still.
You know, I don't actually have any trouble whatsoever with Lynels. I have fought so many of them that their attack patterns are ingrained in my mind, and I know the exact frame to get out of the way or parry on, and
nice.
and I just see I have whittled them down in a way that makes them fundamentally unfun.
See, I can't parry to save my life. And I can only dodge well sometimes, so I've just gotten into the habit of fighting Lynels by like, this is when I'm going to use my shield, and just any attack I don't think I can get out of the way from, I will just block with a shield. Even if it immediately destroys my shield, I have a bunch more and I never really use them for anything else anyway, because I'm very much more of an offensive fighter than defensive. So that's the one thing I lose in Lynel. So he bursts through like 6 shields per Silver Lynel fight.
I don't know if it's just because you have so much ready access to stronger weapons, much stronger than you ever had in Breath of the Wild. Like, I regularly had weapons that went over 100 power by the end of the game.
Nice.
But Lynels just tend to die faster in this game too.
I mean, that could also be it for me, given that I rarely ever equip monster materials to things unless it's the construct ones, because the construct materials get a bonus if they get equipped to the construct weapons, and so I just feel more incentivized to do that. But like, because of that, I guess like the strongest weapon I've ever made is like 80 something.
Yeah,
and that's from one of the boss materials that they drop.
just have like a bunch of like plus 110 plus weapons.
Nice.
The Gerudo weapons, while their durability is not very good, the multiplier you get on the material, it doubles the material strength that you attach to it, so it's very good.
That's pretty
and the Zora weapons also have a double multiplier, which is quite funny.
Isn't that only in water or something?
We'll talk about that later. There's a way.
Okay.
Yeah, but when they get wet, their strength doubles.
I see. I think I see now.
Yeah.
Fuse. Well, the next ability that I guess to talk about would be Ascend, and I actually think this is my favourite ability just because of the convenience factor. Like,
Ascend is interesting.
It's an odd ability because it was. I understand totally why it's in this game. They made it because there are so many cave systems now that they wanted players to be able to have an easy way of getting out of caves once they reach the end, or being able to escape caves if they're running low on health and need to get to a safe space. And like, I really like that. I think that's a really clever idea. Ascend is just fun to get places. There are some areas in the game where it's a harder task getting down than it is getting up. So like, I really like it. But you can also tell that the overworld is like absolutely designed to try and accommodate Ascend, rather than Ascend being placed in like a designed overworld already. There's like all these weird parts of the overworld, like I guess fallen rocks or ruins that jot out and make like perfect flat plains for Link to jump up
perfect
through.
Surfaces.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it does look very weird, but I really like Ascend. I think Ascend's a very fun ability for just traversal. I always like traversal of powers in games.
Yeah. I really enjoy Ascend because it is a genuine ability that they have made whole levels around you using. Like there are levels where the only way up, unless you have the right materials, and by right materials I mean like 20 rockets, is to go up through Ascend. And that is super super nice to see, because it offers just the entire world a sense of feeling designed for you to do things in, rather than just a world where there are places that you can go and you go there.
Yeah.
Like, because of all of the abilities and the new cave systems, I found myself regularly actually taking detours when I was exploring Hyrule this time in Tears of the Kingdom. And I would rarely go a minute without something at least interesting happening. Whereas in Breath of the Wild, there were a lot of long stretches of walking or just riding your horse, and I generally don't feel that, at least until you start getting to the point where you are whittling down the checklist of things that you have left to do.
Whereas at that point, you'll be at the end of the game, so that's your choice if you want to.
Yeah, it's your choice if you want to keep going.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I do think this has made it a very convenient thing. I always find now in Tears of the Kingdom I have like a pattern about how I explore things, where I try and explore things like low down, and once I've done, then ascend upwards. And then like once I've done everything and I've gotten to the top of wherever I am, then I can just glide to the next area, which is like a lot quicker than walking and stuff, and it's incentivized me to actually try and explore and find things. And the same for caves, like because I know I can just ascend out of caves at any point, I have no issue just exploring caves, and if I run into a dead end, like it's not frustrating. I'm just like, cool, I'll just yeet myself out of here, there's clearly nothing else left here. And then I can continue on my journey. It's pretty hassle-free, and I quite like that. I also just like I like it when Link pops up when there are people around and they get like shocked, because obviously this guy just fucking appeared out the ground and yanked himself up. That's always fun to see. So then there's also Recall, which is the fourth main ability. I think this one's the weirdest one for me, because this is the one that feels like it's there solely so that they could design puzzles around it. Like you can use it in combat, like when enemies throw big rocks at you, you can recall it and then have the rocks hit back, and like that's fine. But I always, by the end of the game, I was finding it just easier to just beat them with the weapons I have, or like exploits like fighting. When you fight the pirates, I found this the best method is to knock them off the boat because they can't swim. So,
Yes.
so recall like in combat ended up not being a thing. And I think what I mainly end up using it for is the few puzzles where they want you to use it, where there's like rocks rolling towards you and they want it going back to you, or back where it came, or using it to just like kind of cheese puzzles, like holding a platform up in the air for a little bit, and then letting it drop, and then using recoil so it floats in the air, and then ascending up into it so I can get up to locations. Or like doing that with the flying machines if I ever want to start in the air, because the glider needs like either wheels or like a runway of some kind to go off from ground. But if I hold it in the air and do that and then put recoil on it, then when I go up there I can just immediately turn it on and start flying.
Yeah. I used it a lot of times to hold bridges in the air for 30 seconds and then I did find I did like realize the intentionality of recall like really late, and it basically serves as a counterbalance to this game's whack physics systems. So I remember a lot of the time in Breath of the Wild there would be some like secret items in chests and stuff that you could get, and they were like they would just roll away from you down an entire hill, and you have to go all the way down to go get them, and then go back up to where you were. And with recall, you can just nope. You can just cancel that and bring it right back to you, and not waste your time going to get it and then coming back. Yeah,
that's true. I guess because its range is like ridiculously far, isn't it?
Anything you can see, you can use recall on.
Yeah, because Ultra Hand's got a weird range where it's like if it's horizontal to you, you can go pretty far, but if it's vertical to you, you basically have no reach at all. Even though it feels like you should. But recall has like a ridiculous range. I also just remembered, obviously, you use it to ride blocks back up into the sky, which is just another quick way of getting high into the sky so you can then glide around places.
Yes.
And we'll talk about traveling around this world in a minute, because I think that's worth talking about for the good and the bad that it kind of does in this game. But yeah, recall, I think of the 4 abilities, recall is the one that I ended up using the least, I think, and was the one that stood out to me the least. It kind of just felt like it was there. Like, it has its specific functionalities, but I only used it in specific situations, or situations to cheese things in. Unlike the other 3 where I was using them constantly. And auto build as well, I guess that counts as a 4th. And the camera, which counts as a 5th, but I use the camera because I'm a collector, so I like filling out the compendium with everything in it, so I'm always like taking a picture of things before I fight them. So I got a lot of use out of that. No bombs, no bomb in this game though, because now it's a collectible. It's interesting. It's like it makes me realize how much like because they throw a lot of bomb things at you in this game, but because you don't have it in this one, like I don't know if they throw more at you in this because you don't have it and they want you to use the bomb flowers or the hammers, I guess, or if they just like it was the same amount in Breath of the Wild, but it doesn't really stick in my mind because I had effectively unlimited bombs.
It's not the same amount as it's definitely more than in Breath of the Wild just because of the cave systems. And the amount of like, I don't even remember a situation in Breath of the Wild where there was a whole wall of rock that you had to make your way through.
Yeah.
And I think that's there because they want people to use fuse and make hammers.
Yeah.
Because a lot of those walls will just spit rusty claymores and stones at you
they
to
will,
do that.
Yeah.
But you can also use other ways to get through them. Bombs work.
Bombs. Mm-hmm.
I do find bomb flowers as I actually really like this because it both makes the bombs like really strong again and also makes them like a considered choice that you have to make.
Yeah.
Am I going to use this bomb? Do I need to use this bomb? Do I need bombs later? Do I think I need a safe amount of bombs? Whereas in Breath of the Wild, it was just, all right, I equip the remote bomb, I throw it, I explode it. I equip the other remote bomb, I throw it, I explode it, and I just wait for the cooldown timer to end.
Yeah. I'm honestly trying to remember now what I even used bombs for in Breath of the Wild. Like, the only thing that comes to mind is blowing up enemy bases. Because obviously if you chuck a bomb inside them and it blows up, the whole base crumbles down. It's a quick way of doing a lot of damage, which isn't in this game because there's less of the skull things and they also just don't fall down. I guess bokoblins got better at building their bases this time around. But I can't think of anything else that Breath of the Wild you use bombs for, suddenly.
Yeah, there's cracked walls and stuff in Breath of the Wild. And then you have bomb arrows. And that's another thing about Fuse that we haven't talked about yet. The arrows.
Yes.
You can fuse any material in the game to an arrow, and it may or may not have a unique special property that will be useful. And this system is both interesting and also... I think this system in particular shows a bit of Nintendo's hubris.
You think?
Yes. So
I quite like it. I'll quickly put some positive out there first, because I quite like it. I think it gives the arrows a lot of like flexibility on what they can do, and the game clearly throws more arrows at you because it wants you to use them. It's something that Breath of the Wild arrows were super hard to come by, despite it being such a key mechanic in that game. But in this game, you find them everywhere. So it was it's very rare that I did run out of arrows at points, but it was usually after fighting big bosses like Gleeoks and stuff that I would be less down on arrows. And I found I used fire arrows in this game like a lot. Like, I was actively running out of fire material. I joked earlier about how I rarely use materials for the melee weapons and just hoarded them all, but I did use them for arrows like constantly. And there are some like really good ones on there. And then like I realized stuff like the Gleeoks and the frogs, you can use the Keese arrow to like basically not waste anything and guarantee that you hit them in the eye. Which is super useful. And then obviously all the elemental arrows and the bomb arrows and stuff. There's a lot of like really cool use of things, use of the arrows and stuff in this game, and I quite like it.
Yes. I think the system's actually really, really good, and it definitely encourages the scavenging aspect of the game like a lot more than getting materials in Breath of the Wild did, because all you could do with materials is upgrade your armor, maybe use some to start a fire, and cook. That's it.
Yep, that's it. And then sell them as well if you want to get some more cash.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Whereas you can throw every individual material in this game, and some of them have unique properties when thrown. There's an entire mechanic built around throwing these objects called bright blooms, which act as sources of light in dark areas, and it does a really, really cool thing with the depths, where every bright bloom seed that you throw just stays there forever.
Yeah, unless it gets
never
eaten.
Goes away.
It can be eaten by a little fox.
Yes, it can be eaten by a little enemy, but other than that, if you throw a bright bloom seed the first time you go down in the depths, it'll still be there at the end of your game. It's very interesting.
It's funny, I didn't realize I could throw shit until like a quarter of the way through the game, when I stumbled across the tutorial shrine that taught me how to throw things. I was like, oh okay. All the arrows I'd been wasting beforehand.
Yeah, I every single person I've talked to about this game has mentioned "Oh man, I'm out of arrows," and I'm like, well, "Why? They're everywhere. You should have like at least 20 at all times." And they're just like, "I've been wasting them in the depth. I've been shooting bright bloom arrows," and I'm just like, "You know you can throw them, right?" And they're just like, "What? Huh?"
Yeah. Just doesn't tell you.
It does.
It doesn't tell you. Wait, it does if you start the depths quest. To be fair.
No. If you go to throw a weapon, there is a message on the screen, and it's always there that you can press up to equip a material to throw instead.
Yeah, but when am I ever going to throw a weapon? I'm going to use it till it smashes in my hand and then pick up another one.
When you throw a weapon that's about to break, it does extra damage.
It does extra damage, but my mindset's
I
usually
always
not in
throw
that.
it. Yeah, unless I'm really in the heat of battle, I always throw my weapons before they're about to break.
No, I only throw my weapons if I don't have arrows and I need to hit something from a distance. That's basically it.
But yeah, my problem with this system is, I guess we talked about earlier where this is a game that kind of loses its edge the further you get into it, and it's just a problem with the inventory system in a whole. It's organized very badly.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
By that, so you have rows of 5, and that just goes on until the end of your list. And at the beginning of the game, this is fine, but the further along you get, the longer those lists get, and the longer you have to scroll through them to find what you need in them. And while you can sort things, and there is a useful option to sort by items that you use the most.
Yep.
Or by highest attack power if you need a material for a weapon, that list just gets too long. To the point where at times I would spend 30 minutes scrolling through the arrow material screen. 30 seconds.
It's a long time to be scrolling. Ooh. How much do you have?
I have to stare at every individual pixel and examine them in great detail.
Really think if you want to use it.
30 seconds to scroll through the entire material list to find a material that I needed that I didn't use very often. And even then, when it was a material I used very often, it would be like 10 seconds, because there's so much, and there's just so much information on the screen at a time when you pull up that bar that it becomes overwhelming, and it's a little bit difficult to find what you need.
I think this game also has that problem with clothes, because you're hot swapping through clothes a lot, and it's ridiculous. It's because you got obviously the set benefits, but then sometimes you can't do that because you say you want snow boots and they're not part of the other winter set, so you have to have that as a separate thing. And you're constantly just swapping between the 3 different types of clothing, and there's so much clothing in this game, which is great, but it's an absolute pain in the bum to keep having to change things in and out. So it feels like this and materials as well should really have the option to add a favorites to it.
Oh, absolutely,
sort by favorites. And just actual full armor sets, not just the piddly sort by type or sort by set that it currently is.
If you have a full armor set, you should just have an option that appears that says equip whole set.
Yeah.
That would solve so many problems. But in general, it's just okay, you have the normal clothes, and then you have the tunic for this game, the new champion's tunic.
Yes.
And then you have the boots, and then you have amiibo clothing at the bottom. And as somebody who wore amiibo clothing for most of the game, but would have to regularly equip other clothes for protection against the elements, or because I want to swim or climb faster, I would have to go from the top to the bottom of that list quite often.
Yeah, it's when you have the full set bonuses, you have the full Zora set bonus, and it's upgraded by the fairy, and so you can now swim a lot faster. I found myself, anytime I hit water, having to put the entire outfit on to get the full benefit out of it. And then, so that's going in and changing 3 things, and then when I'm out of the water, going out and changing them back to the Fierce Deity outfit, which I wore quite a lot in this game for the attack boost. that it gave you. Or the climbing one is the same example, or the slippery one if it's raining. The lightning helm as well, which protects you from like all thunder, is one that's like very context sensitive to wear, but is basically the best thing to wear in those situations. So you have, whenever those crop up, you have to go and then swap to that as well, and it's just kind of like, I wish there was a more easy way to do this, and it feels like there's like a really obvious ways they could have made this simpler for the player, and it's just not here.
There's one thing that is so obvious to me that I can't believe they did not do. With armor, there are 3 pieces of armor in a set. The rows are 5 long.
No
matter what, all of these sets are going to have 3, then 2, and then 1 on the next row. And that's not accounting for if you have like multiple of one item. But that would be a problem that you yourself make. You yourself have caused that. But if they just added 1 more column to that screen, it would be a lot easier to go through just by the sheer convenience of having 2 sets on each row.
Yeah, that's true as well. It is kind of wild that they stuck to having it be 5x5 when it's creates such an obvious like imbalance. It's pretty silly. It's like also just remembering the order of the outfits as well and where they go. Like you eventually sort of get used to it, but like at the time I always find I have to move it to set, and then like I have to sort of remember that it's sort of in like the more weirder or unique the outfit are, the lower down it is on the list, and that's kind of how I remember it. Can I also point out, it's really weird how the only Breath of the Wild outfit not in this game is the female Gerudo outfit that everyone liked. It's like the only one that got removed, which is just rude.
Yeah, I think that's correct.
Yeah.
And the Switch shirt's gone, which is
the Switch
funny.
shirt. Oh,
funny.
So's the Rex costume, I guess.
I loved wearing the Switch shirt in the Wii U version of Breath of the Wild.
Got to advertise that next gen system to everyone around Hyrule, you know. So let's talk about moving around in this game, because movement is a lot of fun. I still think like riding horses is fun. I still think there's a slight issue of it's very easy to get distracted, have to get off your horse to go and do something, and then end up too far away from your horse to have to call it back, and then you either have to make the decision to run back to where your horse is or just go on without it, which is usually what happened to me. So a lot of the time I found that I just didn't ride a horse, or I just caught a wild horse if I needed to ride it for a little bit. And I think that's more... I think there should be some sort of command or item, even if it's something you unlock in the game, that lets you summon your horse to you. Like I
would say,
I think that's something that
I would say that when you go to a stable, there should be a service to go get your horse for you.
Well, I mean, you can do that. If you go to a stable and then you're like, take out horse, you can just click the same one and they bring it to you.
Really?
Yeah. You can get your horse. You can get your same horse that's already out.
I have 250 hours in this game. I did not know that.
Yeah, no, that's it's simple. You can do it at your house as well if you buy the stable there.
That's
But like the amount, it depends on like when I go to a stable. Like I know there's a whole bunch of them around, but usually in the situation where I'd want a horse, I'm not near a stable. I've like just landed down on the ground and now I can't get back into the sky to get around, and so I'm just like, well, I guess I'm walking. And there's also like, I could use auto build to build a car, but I'd have to spend Zonite to do that, and I want to save the Zonite to power up my battery, so I guess I'm walking. But at least you have that option, I suppose. You can now make vehicles on the ground to help you get through things. Like, sleds make shield surfing far more viable to get around anywhere. We talked about Ascend making it easier to get up places, which obviously you still need to climb because not everywhere has a ledge above that Link can jump into. But it's there to make traversal up quicker. And just generally flying around, like, the way I traverse this map is that once I felt like I'd finished exploring it, I would always go do the Skyview Tower last, because it would launch me into the sky, and then I can fly and explore the sky areas, and it's much easier to get around the map by gliding down to the location you want to go to, rather than running on the ground. Which is great in how it gets you around, but it also brings up a problem I think I've noticed in this, and that's like being able to just glide or make a flying machine and fly over lots of areas of the game to travel around almost makes it too easy. You don't really explore anything. You just know where you just know where you're going, because there's, unless you're like actively looking around as you fall, which I appreciate that when you go into your zoom mode or your camera mode while falling, it at times slows down so that you have actual time to look around at stuff. But unless you're like actively doing that to look at the ground and find stuff, you generally will just like fly over lots of this land that might have a shrine or a Korok or Addison or something like that that you could have interacted with had you gone by foot. But it's also like the convenience of flying, so it's like pretty hard sort of balance between like whether or not it's a great feature or not, I suppose.
Yeah, I have a very funny horse story.
Okay.
So at the beginning of the game, I was going to Hebra to follow the main quest line, and I passed by the Forgotten Temple. I'm riding on Epona, and then I approached this well, and it's like, and the well has a gloom around it, and I'm like, what's this? So I get off the horse and I jump in the well. I've been in a few wells. I know that there's stuff underneath it. This well was actually a hole that leads to the depths. So I was down there. I just kind of lost track of time. And before I knew it, I had gone to go recover my horse 10 hours later. Yeah. So that's funny. But you talk about flying, and there's a major issue with this game, like genuinely, a huge problem with this game that I have, and that's that the fog is so just unreasonably thick. If you fly up to the sky in daytime, you cannot actually just see the ground, like at all. Like 9 times out of 10. I shot out of a sky tower and I was trying to like find somewhere to go, look at the ground. I just couldn't see anything. Like I'd have to get like close to the ground to be able to see anything again. And it's just like, is this because of the Switch? Why did they do this? Was this intentional?
I think this is 100% technical issues, because I've seen a video where someone removed the fog. And the game looks kind of weird without it, because you can see like basically to the other side of the map, and it's very clear that stuff just isn't loaded in correctly when it's that far away from Link. So I think the fog like exists to try and like keep all the rendering to a minimum and stuff. That's why stuff like, because this game has a case where things will pop in, has a big pop in problem, especially with enemies. If you know where like a sub-boss is, like a Gleeok, when you're gliding down, it's like kind of funny to just watch it pop into existence.
Oh god. So I eventually learned a way to glide incredibly fast. I would compare the speed of gliding to a glitch from Breath of the Wild.
Oh, yeah.
It's not quite as fast as blasting yourself over the entire world of Hyrule, but it's still fast enough that the world does not load.
Oh, damn.
And I was flying down from Hyrule Castle to Lookout Landing, and I have footage of this. It'll be on screen right now. But you'll see this. I go so fast to Lookout Landing that I land at the north gate, and the gate's not there. However, the hitbox for it is. and I can't go inside or open the doors to go in. So I have to wait like 10 seconds for the doors to load so that I can enter Lookout Landing.
That's kind of wild. I never had that happen to me.
Yeah. I don't know if it's because I have a first model Switch or... Well, it's... Absolutely, that's probably part of the issue. But the fact that this happens on a first model Switch is not ideal.
No, not at all. Should we go into spoilers? Can we just throw them?
Yeah, I guess let's open the floodgates, everyone. If you don't want spoilers, mark this time, save the video, come back when you're ready. We'll be here.
Yes. So, spoilers. Let's talk about the big one that affects gameplay, the party system with the champions, and how it's like great and also terrible in its execution. Like, I really like the idea of having the party be there and having characters who fight alongside you and stuff. It's great. They can distract enemies, they can deal the extra damage. It feels like Link and the sages are fighting alongside each other, even though most of them are in spirits form. Like, it's really cool. But like, when you have all 5 of them, it's like a huge clusterfuck to try and activate some abilities or get into situations. Like, Yonobu is one I used a lot because his attack can destroy walls, which makes mining a lot easier. But when you're in a cave and he's the biggest one, he will like sometimes just not spawn in.
Yeah, he'll just go away.
Yeah,
because
the others will spawn in instead because they're all a lot smaller, and you don't want them there. You want Yonobu. But he won't because everyone else is there, and they won't spawn on top of each other. So you have to either turn them all off except Yonobu, or awkwardly run around, which is what I usually did until Yonobu spawned, then activated him so he wouldn't go away and walk back to where I need.
And you have to also walk carefully so you don't accidentally deactivate him.
Yeah, it's like really, really annoying. And it feels... It's weird. I've seen people throw suggestions out for how they could have done this better. And some of them I kind of get. Like, Riju's only really works with the bow and arrow anyway. So it should just be something you activate with the bow and arrow. Tulin's only works when you're gliding, so the option should only really appear. The amount of times I've clicked on Tulin's while I'm on the ground is like super frustrating because it does nothing at that point.
Yeah. Okay, Tulin doesn't work perfectly, but for the purpose that it's supposed to have, it works perfectly. However,
yes, when you're in the air, it's great. And like Yonobu, when you're riding on a machine, it's also great. Like the Yonobu cannon that you just fire off and everything is like really funny, and it's great for exploring the depths because I used it to figure out how deep areas were when I was traveling around.
I can't recall the amount of times when I have killed a bunch of enemies and I'm gathering the spoils and I'm just like mashing the A button, and Tulin walks up next to me and then blows them all away.
It's just silly. It shouldn't be activating on the ground. And then Sidon's is weird because it's like probably the worst of the 3, of the 4 even, main ones.
It's the worst of the 5, honestly.
Yeah, it's got like a shield, but the shield it deactivates as soon as you attack, which kind of means like, why would you ever really use it? Because it also deactivates after a certain amount of time. The attack is pretty decent, but I don't think it's anything massively special.
Yeah.
So it's only really used for its one gimmick in the water temple.
So
and then that's about it.
Yeah. Let's talk about Prince Sidon for a moment. And how, while he has the worst ability in the game, it is also the best ability in the game, because you can exploit it to make yourself wet and activate the double damage boost on your Zora equipment and make the best equipment in the game.
Yeah, that is how you would do that. That's true. I guess it works in tandem with all the Zora stuff.
It is fundamentally the most useful combat ability while being completely useless without Zora gear. So, congratulations, guys.
You did it.
You did it.
Yeah, Sidon's ability is weird. I got it first. He was the first one I got. So, like, I got to use it sort of properly at the start, but once everyone else is there, he feels like he's more in the way, where I want to activate Riju and Yunobu's, and I activate Sidons by mistake.
Yeah. The partner system... the partner system is actually, like... Okay, so, all the dungeons in this game are quite wide open, wide open spaces, except for the Lightning Temple,
Yes.
which is this cramped tomb that you go in. And so I had to actually turn off all 4 of the other partners so that I could even use Riju. because Riju would just stand there and not come towards me because the 4 other people were in the way.
Yeah, I think I had that as well in the Lightning Temple. I had an issue of Riju just not wanting to come over to where I am. So thankfully she's got ridiculously long range, so sometimes I would go over to her, even if it was like ages away, activate her and then just walk alongside her power, and it would usually reach the switch anyway. But that was a pain in the palm, just having Riju, or she just vanishes and I'm like, where are you? I need you to solve this. What's going on, girl? Minoru is I think Minoru's gimmick is really cool. Like, as an idea, you get to ride around this giant mech. But I think, like, in actual use, it's just always better to be Link. In, like, on his own. Other than exploring, because with Minoru, you can, like, walk across lava and gloom and stuff like that. And that's really useful, and you can really, like, if you get Minoru early enough, you can, like, cheese a lot of stuff in the game.
Yeah, and she has a headlight. She has a headlight, too, so...
Yeah, she has a headlight as well, so you can see through the depths. So she's great for exploring the depths. But, like, in terms of combat, I just always found it just easier to play as Link. Like, he's much easier to dodge stuff, because you can't dodge at all with Minoru. And I found, like, her actual attacks to be... like, they break really easily. Like, you really need to give her the right sort of stuff on her hands in order to get the most out of her. It's just a pain, really.
So let's talk about Mineru for a moment and how she's the second most useful partner in the game. Okay, so another funny exploit. You can climb on Mineru and then immediately jump off Mineru to have enough airtime to activate bullet time with your bow and fire enough arrows to just kill whatever's in front of you.
Okay. I guess I didn't think about that.
I found this out very early on, and the once imposing and fearsome Gleeok just became a freaking joke. It's actually... I have broken this game apart in so many ways, in terms of things that I've done, that I feel both accomplished and like I've cheated myself at the same time.
Yeah, I found that that was like the best way of getting through Gleeok fights when I realised it. Because I would always start a Gleeok fight by flying down from above onto it. And then I realised, well, yeah, why don't I just, like, anytime there's a Gleeok flight, I'll just use, even if it's just like the recall or something, or like the hovering platform Zonai device, I'll just use this in like every fight to just get high and then come straight down like at the Gleeok and to get the slow time thing, because once you can hit it in the eyes, it's easy. Same for frogs. The frogs are like Froxes, whatever, are super easy. They're probably the easiest enemy in the entire game. Because
absolutely.
Once you can get slowdown, you just shoot them in the eye, immediately paralyze them, and even their like counter attack for after they've gotten back up launches you into the air, so you can just do it again.
Yep.
So the slow time does really make bosses quite simple when they've got big weak points like that. But it's sort of satisfying to figure it out, given especially with the Gleeoks, because the first time I encountered one, it was like absolutely terrifying. I couldn't get anywhere close to it because of how its attacks worked. The laser beams it fires and stuff.
Yeah, the first Gleeok that I walked up to was the one on the Bridge of Hylia. And I found out that he makes the atmosphere around him hot. So I just had to jump off the bridge.
Yeah, that's the same one I first ran into. I was like, I'll see if I'm strong enough to fight this guy now, and then nope. It just like everything got hot. There are laser beams, the wind from his wings. I think that one's really cleverly placed because I think it's going to be a lot of people's first Gleeoks. And it's like, because you're in such a narrow corridor, it's ridiculously hard to get close to it. Man, the sub-bosses in this game, I think I fought a lot more of them. The new ones are obviously the Sky Giants, whatever they're called now, I can't remember. The Froxes and the Gleeoks. And I think
they're Flux Constructs?
Yes, Flux Constructs. And I think they all do a pretty good job of getting across like the new mechanics and also just being like a good new threat to the game.
Yeah.
Froxes are obviously super easy, but the first time I encountered one, it jump scared the hell out of me. And it took me, I died to it the first time, but once I figured it out, I was like, oh, this is like the Dongo, but a frog. And just launch bombs into its mouth and beat it up, so they started to become a lot easier.
Another funny footage moment. The first time I encountered a Frox, I jumped down a pit to the depths and landed right in front of one, and then it killed me instantly. And then I loaded the save file from the game over screen, and it killed me instantly. Very interesting first encounter with the Frox.
Yep. It's I think then the Flux Constructs, I really like how you fight them using the Ultra Hand ability. Like, because I know quite a few people who didn't realize this, but you can grab like its core or just the blocks it's made out of with the Ultra Hand and just yeet them off until it falls apart. And
you can just do that?
Yeah, and you can grab the core of the Flux Construct and just shake the Ultra Hand and ability, and it will just break apart immediately. And then you just beat the crap out of it.
Oh, that's a cool fight then. I was about to complain about how I needed to use the auto-targeting beams to kill the third form.
No.
Oh my god.
Because it moves around. You're meant to grab it because it's just completely grabbable by the Ultra Hand.
I'm gonna go fight one after we talk here and experience the fight how it's meant to be fought. Jesus Christ!
Yeah, the only part of it I really struggled with was the part where it went really high into the sky. But that's because the further it's like the Flux Construct 3s and stuff, you can't. It's too high up to use Ascend. But then I realized I could just use Recall on the blocks it throws at me to just ride them back up, which I think is their intended way of dealing with that. So I think it's a really fun use of all of the abilities, all the Zonai abilities, because you can use Recall on it, you can use Ultra Hand on it, you can use Ascend on the lower level ones. The only one you wouldn't... Actually, can you even use Fuse on it? I wonder if you break things apart, its blocks, could you fuse them to your weapons and they lose them permanently? That would be funny.
No, I don't think so. I'll try it, and I'll see what happens. But you definitely do get a material that you can only use with Fuse. You can't pick it up.
Yes. Which is something you can get from stuff like Taloses as well.
Yes.
Which is interesting. It's weird, like, there are some materials you can pick up, and then there are some that you just can't.
Yeah.
And they have to be attached. And I also find it really annoying with the compendium as well, because there are some enemy drops that do go in the compendium and then some that just don't. And I think the ones that go in the compendium are all the ones that you can like attach to your weapons to make them, the ones that are intentionally meant to be attached to your weapons to make them stronger, like the horns and stuff. But, like, it feels like if you could attach guts to your sword, there's nothing that prevents you from doing that. So why have this? And it's not like you're going to be able to find, like, a Gleeok horn not attached to a Gleeok. So why even bother at that point? You just have them search out the monster. Because the compendium tells you what they drop. So if you're looking for something, just click on Gleeok, see that it obviously it's going to drop its own horn. And then look for that instead of look for the material.
Does it drop a horn?
Yeah, the Gleeok definitely drops a horn. They all have special horns, and then if you beat the King Gleeok, it drops all three. I'm pretty sure they counted as horns.
I thought it was just a wing.
No, I'm pretty sure because they have wings, guts, and horns. I'm pretty sure, and the horns are like the stuff that gets added to your weapon just to make it stronger. Because wings in this game add to your weapon and they allow you to throw stuff further. That's what wings do.
Yeah, they allow you to throw stuff further and shoot arrows further.
Yeah.
I guess there's no sense in talking about it right now. I'll just fact check it and we'll find out later.
Should we talk about the depths and the sky itself, as well as the regular ground, like all three levels? So I think that it's really cool that there's 3 maps in this game. The depths is just as big as the overworld. And the sky is technically as big, but it has a lot less land mass on it, so you've got actually a lot less to explore. Now, obviously, when I think of the sky, I want to compare it to Skyward Sword. And I think the sky in Tears of the Kingdom is a lot better than it is in that game, but the two are very similar to one another. Skyward Sword's big issue is that most of the land masses in the sky, there was really nothing to do on them. They were just like floating things with chests on them. And that's kind of the same here. But at least those chests and shrines that you find in the sky have puzzles around them, which makes them feel a bit more involved than a lot of the islands in the sky. But it's like really obvious, you know, like every single sky archipelago has a cross on it, and every single one of those crosses has a shrine on it, and like almost every single one of those shrines are a get the damn crystal and bring it to me puzzle, which started to get really tiring at the end. I know why they're there. It's so that they can have shrine puzzles in the environment, which I think is like really cool. It's a good use of the world design. But I guess every time I saw a crystal, I just always had a reaction to it, like, oh, not again, not with this. But all the other Skylands, like, there's some fun ones out there, but it feels like a lot of repeated material. There's too few of the sudden anti-grav zone, or like, I think my favorite island that I just stumbled across was the mirror one, where it's
that is my favorite too.
Because I just found it randomly when I went up a waterfall and then rode a minecart, and suddenly anti-grav kicked in. And I was like, what is going on here? And that was really cool, but there's too few of them. But otherwise, the sky is fine. The depths, however, it feels like there's a lot of stuff down there, but there's not really any reason to explore most of it, because there's like nothing to do down there. You got fighting the Froxes, you got finding the treasure chests, and you've got like the actual Koga mission, which is basically the only mission in the depths. And everything else in there, you really just use the depths in order to figure stuff out on the above ground, because they're mirrors of each other, so every shrine has a light route. So once you realise that, you're like, oh, well, light routes are much easier to find than shrines, so if I get every light route, it'll tell me where every shrine is, so I can use that to track things. And every goddess statue has one of those, like, Poe statues below it, so I can use that to track things as well. So, like, that's a cool use of the depths, but because the depths basically looks like entirely the same, across, like, the entirety of it, this huge map, and there's, like, no side quest down there, a lot of it ends up sort of feeling like, that's neat, I suppose, or just flying over things. Like, I was complaining about how flying is really convenient to the point where you wouldn't really explore a lot of the ground below when you're in the overworld. But I think that's a-okay in the depths. I found most of the time when I explored the depths, my go-to strategy was to dive down a hole and then fly towards my marker and try and fly as far as I can, because it was just a lot faster than having to walk through the dark and throw the light every 5 steps.
Yeah, I would constantly build contraptions with rockets on them to go as high as I could and then just fly. The only thing of value in the depths are the areas with names. Everything else is barren, and there are some bomb flowers and like the mud items that confuse enemies around, and puff shrooms and stuff. There's items, but there's not valuable items aside from bombs in between those locations that have names. And I did come to a realization because I seem to be a lot more content with the depths than a lot of other people. And I had like 5 individual people, independent of each other, all say the game was Minecraft when they were watching me play in the depths only. and it's just like, oh, yeah, this is that. Yeah, it's basically that entire gameplay loop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
You explore, you mine for zonite, you break down blocks in the wall.
Even the gloom system. Even the gloom system, where you have to recover with food that you've prepared or at the light roots.
Mm-hmm.
Even that is the hunger system from Minecraft.
Yeah, this game does feel very Minecraft at points. Like even just exploring the caves. There's that cave early on that's like underneath Hyrule Castle Town, which is just full of breakable rocks, and you have to go through so many hammers and stuff. And when you're tackling this point in the game, you probably don't have Yonobu because it's quite early on. And it really started to feel like Minecraft at one point because I was spending more time hammering through walls than I was doing anything else.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, the depths, it's got some like cool little pocket areas in it. And it was really cool when I first started exploring it, but eventually I just started realizing it's like all the same. There's not really a lot of variation down there.
I realized around 20 hours into the game that every mining location is almost exactly the same. And every sky island that is the cross shape is almost entirely exactly the same. There's a few where they'll put the shrine off to the side instead of on the cross itself, but it is such a minute difference that it does not matter.
Yeah, all the archipelagos are the same. They've all got a thing that shoots you out, they've all got a gacha machine, and they've all got a shrine somewhere close enough to them.
Yeah.
And that shrine always needs a crystal.
I noticed that the unique islands were so sparsely spread out that I actually didn't get to a single unique island, aside from like the ones where you skydive and you do like go through the rings. I didn't get to a single unique island, discounting the temple areas, until like 80 hours into the game.
Yeah, I mean, it was the same for me. I didn't go to the Forge one until I'd beaten the game, basically.
Yeah.
Or it might have been right before the final boss. Because I'd seen it in the sky and I had no idea what it was, and I decided, you know what, actually, I'm going to make an effort to try and get there. And like I said, the other one I just sort of randomly ran into, because I was looking for something else. I think I was looking for a solution to one of those Misco costume side quests. And then I just went up a waterfall and then suddenly ended up there. It was like after I'd done the third temple. So that one I just stumbled across it. But it was like, I was so shocked by it because of the fact that I'd been around a lot of the sky at this point, because after every time I do an area, I tended to launch myself into the sky. That, like, there was actually a really cool island suddenly. Yeah. It was like really bizarre to me. But yeah, it's still better than Skyward Sword Sky. And I understand they can't have, because of the nature of how the sky works, they can't have it be like as big as the overworld. But it would have been nice to have a bit more island variation going on.
It's more comparable to Wind Waker's Sea.
Yeah.
In terms of the amount of unique content in it.
So anything else gameplay-wise that you want to bring up? Like, we could talk about the shrines and the side quests, which I think are better in this game than they were in Breath of the Wild. The shrines especially feel like a huge glow-up in terms of the design.
Yeah, I would say every shrine, obviously excluding the tutorial ones where they just, like, pause you and tell you to do a single action. Aside from those shrines, every shrine in Tears of the Kingdom is just flat out better than any shrine from Breath of the Wild. They are so much more tightly designed. It feels like the solutions are like they feel so much more like natural. It just feels like you're getting into the swing of it like so much easier than a lot of shrines in Breath of the Wild, where the slight variation would just be, there's a magnesis door in this shrine. However, one of them is on a bombable wall, and you can just take the door. Whereas in this game, like every shrine's like that.
Yeah, I think that like there are a handful of shrines in this game that almost feel like mini dungeons in how they're designed. Like they actually have small keys and everything. It's the one that always comes to my mind is the sneaky one with the lasers, where you've got to basically break into a facility and get around all the laser traps and stuff in order to get a ball to the outside. And like it feels designed like the tradition, like an old Zelda dungeon, just in a very compact form. And it's just cool, and it's not the only one that's like that. There's a handful of those sort of dungeons in the game, shrines in the game. Just like there's also like a handful of the survival ones where it makes you want to like, it strips away everything you have, and it's just like, all right, now beat all these enemies with just using your wits and what you can pick up. And those are really fun. It's like the vehicle one especially is really funny.
The survival shrines are this game's version of the tests of strength. And they're so much more interesting. It's not just like one enemy in a flat arena,
yes,
with like maybe some obstacles or water on the ground that you can use cryonis on, cryosis, whatever the cryosis,
ice freezy power,
cold.
Yeah,
yeah. It's not just so simple. Everyone is a challenge that is designed that you have to overcome with your actual like. Wits and your skill rather than just a combat challenge.
Yeah, the shrines are just very good in this game.
They took the Ultra Hand ability, the ability to manipulate objects in the environment, to its natural conclusion for me, which was when they made you play Jenga with the Ultra Hand.
That's a fun one.
I got to that. I saw the pillar. And I was like, what the hell is this? I activated the Ultra Hand power. I realized every single, like, that pillar had several levels of interactable blocks. I realized the shape that they were in, and I just started laughing. I was laughing for 2 minutes. I could not stop. It was incredible.
Yeah, that one is great. I really like the baseball batting one that happens really early on, where you have to set up like a whole batting ring and launch it at the right time in order to hit the ball to hit a target. That one's a really cool one. Like I mentioned, there are some frustrating ones though, where I ended up just cheesing it. There was one that I felt really stupid that I couldn't figure out, which was the rail one, where you have to like create a way for you to get across the rails. Because I just did not think about the fact that I could make it into like a ski lift instead. Yeah. So I was trying to balance things in a way where the weight would shift as it rode along the top of the rail system. Because I'm stupid, I guess. But I ended up cheesing that one, at least the second half of it, by making like just a giant thing and then gliding across the gap instead. If I had a long bridge, I could have probably used that as well.
Oh yeah, there's a shrine. It's the middle one on the Great Plateau, where you have to collect a bunch of boxes and then stack them in a way where you can climb them to the end of the shrine. However, one of those blocks is an ice block, and during the puzzle of the shrine, you are supposed to melt the ice block in lava in order to make some platforms so you can go across the lava. However, that ice block spawns indefinitely, and as far as I know, there is no cap on the amount of platforms you can spawn in the lava. So I just made like 30 of them, and then put them in a line, and then built a bridge, and then climbed out of the shrine.
Yeah. It's pretty fun. There's a lot of clever solutions to these shrines.
Yeah,
that's what makes them so enjoyable.
It feels like even if like you're aware that you're definitely going outside of the boundaries of what the designer of the puzzle wanted you to do, it still feels like you're tackling this in a way that feels like genuine and makes you feel smart. I every time I built a bridge that overcame a challenge successfully, I took a screenshot of it and I sent it to a friend of mine with the tagline, "I'm a fucking genius," and it just became this running gag of me saying that every time I built a damn bridge, the like simplest object in the game to build, and that's
and it just works.
That's my takeaway from this game in general. It makes you feel very smart for doing very simple things.
And that's all you really want from a game. Sometimes it's all you really need. Yep, the shrines are good. This whole game is good. I really enjoyed Tears of the Kingdom. It's interesting if I ever wanted to go back and play Breath of the Wild, whether or not I'd be able to find some of its unique features like enjoyable now, or whether or not Tears of the Kingdom has like entirely eclipsed it. Because it's clear that they've tried to do things differently from Breath of the Wild while still keeping the same engine, which is good because it made Tears of the Kingdom feel very new and fresh, but it also just feels like an improvement in every single way.
This game to me feels like it is doing what Breath of the Wild wanted to do. It feels like they're finally making the game that they wanted to make, that they didn't have time to make because they were building the whole engine in the world. And now that was set in stone, aside from, obviously the amount of work that they would have to do to just tweak things and build new scenarios on top of that, they had the groundwork already there, so they could finally build like really interesting, unique scenarios in that world. Whereas a lot of Breath of the Wild feels very samey to me. Like, no experiences feel fundamentally unique in the way that something like going up to the Wind Temple in this game does, which is this extremely fun platforming challenge where you're constantly shooting up into the sky and flying over vast amount of sky, and it's just the music swelling. It feels like amazing, and there is nothing from Breath of the Wild that incited that kind of response from me. This game like actually managed to grip me in a way that the previous one just didn't do, and I think that's great. I think a lot of the spark and ingenuity that I felt was lacking from Breath of the Wild, which I know that's like a controversial take because a lot of people view Breath of the Wild as a breath of fresh air. And be sure to watch my review on this, which will follow this video sometime in the future, because I'm going to use that exact phrase in a very spiteful way. But yeah, Breath of the Wild to me feels very samey. It feels very safe, which is quite the contradiction to most people's thought on that game. Whereas this one feels like it's doing things that are interesting. Like, Breath of the Wild presents its world as a post-apocalypse. However, it does not feel like that. There's ruined architecture, but like, aside from civilization being very sparse, and places where people are being few and far between, there's no like huge dire stakes in the world that you have to correct. Aside from like even the problem with the Zora in Breath of the Wild, where it's just constantly raining. That's fine. They're creatures of water. Whereas in this game, their water's being polluted. Like the Rito are stuck
Super
in a
Mario
constant
Sunshine now.
Yeah, the Rito are stuck in a constant blizzard. The Gerudo are being haunted by undead moth creatures, and there's a huge sandstorm, and they just can't get around. They gotta bunker down in a shelter underneath their city, and the Gorons all get hooked on crystal meth. There's like actual like stakes. Even the outlying areas, like aside from Hateno Village.
She's just having a political dispute.
Yeah.
between a fashion designer.
That's truly the
mayor.
most horrifying thing that you can do in the world. Like Lurline has been destroyed, is taken over by monsters, and even Kakariko, which it is continuing as normal, had like half of the village destroyed by falling debris.
Yeah. kinda sucks. Yeah. No, I do think that tonally around the world and stuff, everything definitely feels a lot more dire. It's a very good use of the map in Breath of the Wild, Breath of the Wild, reusing it again, because that was obviously a big fear. And the cave system that is in this game also adds like a lot of freshness to traveling across the map as well.
I would say going around and solving the problems of the world and then seeing that change happen, whereas in Breath of the Wild all you do is like stop a divine beast and then it just sits somewhere until the end of the game. Like seeing the world be fixed around you, seeing your actions actually have like
consequences to the whole world.
Not
consequences in a good way.
Seeing your actions actually have an effect on the world, like that is a big change that I think has actually kind of been sort of lacking from a lot of games in the series, like in general, where you solve a problem but it doesn't really feel like anything's changed. In this game, like there's a huge change in every region. There's always like in every region there's a kind of distorted, kind of hollow sounding version of the song, and that's really powerful because once you solve that area's problem and you conquer the temple, it all goes back to how it normally should be, and that is they just do so many things that make you actually feel like you're on this heroic journey and you're helping people and saving civilizations.
Yeah, the only other Zelda game I can think that does something similar is Majora's Mask, which obviously the example of that game being the snow-capped mountains melting once you've done the temple.
Yeah.
And it changes everything in that area. But then obviously you reset it when you go back in time, so it's not a permanent fixture. But yeah, that's the only one I could really think of. I guess maybe Zora's Domain freezing over in Twilight Princess might be another one.
Yeah, the Twilight Realm stuff in Twilight Princess is a good example of you like fixing the world. Aside from the Kakariko section where you commit domestic terrorism, all
in the greater good. I guess the one other thing I want to bring up in this discussion before we wrap things up is, could this game have like the most collectibles of like any game ever? Because when I sit back and think about it, there really is like a lot of stuff in this game to find. Not just like stuff like, you know, getting every weapon or getting every piece of clothing, whatever. But you've got all the Korok seeds, of which there are the same amount as there are in Breath of the Wild. You've got all the Addison signs, of which I have no idea how many there are. You get a medal for fighting every single... for like just wiping out an entire species of sub-boss, basically. Which the only one of those I've done are the Moldugas. You got the entire Hyrule Compendium, which is taking a photograph of like basically everything in the game. Obviously, you've got all the shrines and all the side quests and stuff. You've also got getting every cave and getting every bubble frog for that side quest. You've also got every recipe if you really want to go extreme, because there's now the cookbook in the game. So you can fill out the recipe, and there's obviously fully exploring all of the depths, the overground, and the sky. Getting all of them, getting all the old maps, getting all the Sage's Well, which is a new power up that I always forget exists in this game.
I will say the Sage's Will is just fundamentally useless, because.
Yeah, I didn't really notice a difference in them.
Yeah, we didn't talk about it earlier, but a big problem with the sages, aside from their pathing being like kind of whack, is their AI is pretty bad. They just stand around, or they constantly just shuffle. They just like shuffle around and don't attack the enemy when you're fighting it. It's yeah, the slight power boost that you get from the Sage's Will is just completely useless.
Yeah. But, like, it's another collectible to add to the list. Every glider pattern, I'll ignore the ones that are exclusive to Amiibo in this game, but, like, every region has its own glider pattern that you can get.
You get gliders from completing those kind of collection quests, too, and from taking pictures of things. And it's not just, like, everything. Photos. It's just like things that show you that they have a glider pattern when you take a picture of them. He also give you like a list. He'll give you a list of ones that you can find.
Damn, I didn't actually know that. I've only been getting the ones from Amiibo and from the different regions. There's also all the Schema Stones as well, of which you get the Zonai Schema Stones and the Yiga Schema Stones, which also
the Yiga
fill out the depths. Yeah. It's wild how much stuff there is in this game to do.
there is a lot to do. I have not done everything, I would say. I haven't upgraded every armor or collected every Korok seed, but I have done everything that I'm willing to do, willing to spend time on.
Yeah, willing is the key word here. Yeah. I've done every shrine. I've got fully healthed out. I do want to get every piece of clothing. I think I'm only missing like the Farouche armor or the Lanayru armor sets.
I have every piece of clothing. I just haven't upgraded them because I don't want to bother.
Yeah. No, I'm not going to bother doing that. I've done every shrine. I've obviously beaten the game. I'd like to do every side quest if possible. That's basically the only thing I've got left to do.
I did end up doing every side quest. I did every cave and every
that as well. I want to do that.
I did do every sign. that was
I'll do the signs if I find them.
Oh god, I did every well.
Well's one I'd like to do, but I mean it's a side quest, isn't it?
Yes.
But I just don't know if I can. Maybe I'll look up where they are.
I did cave to looking up the locations of the remaining wells that I hadn't found and the remaining signs that I hadn't found, because there was just like literally like 3 left in both quest lines that I just could not find.
See, I don't know how many signs I've got left, so I'm just not going to bother with that. At least they tell you how many wells you've got left to find.
Yeah.
So,
for anyone, if you want to know, there's 81. And you just can't keep track of that. There's no way to keep track of that unless you leave a marker on every location that you've been to. You will not know which ones you have done until you go and check. Which sucks. I was leaving a marker on every single sub-boss I found, and that was basically the only thing. And Korok seeds, if I didn't do the Korok seed when I found out. I didn't do that for sub-bosses, so I am not going to bother getting the medals for them.
Fair. My plan was to do the medals for them until I realised that I still had like 60-something Taloses left by the time I'd beaten the game, and I was like, heck no.
Yeah, there's a lot in the depths.
Yeah, there are a lot in the depths, and I'm not exploring that by foot just to find a bunch of stony boys to beat up.
Yeah.
Forget it. I'll fight every Gleeok, maybe, because I think I've only got the King Gleeoks left, but that's it. Alright, let's wrap this up.
No.
No?
We haven't talked about a major part of the game that is possibly the biggest thing they've done to address the biggest complaint people have about Breath of the Wild. So this game has dungeons, and they are actually pretty good, I would say. I'm a little disappointed that there's still Divine Beast type dungeons where you have to you get every location that you have to go interact with something marked on your map, and then you have to go to them. But they are themed in a way that makes every one of them unique, and they have actual structural design that feels like you're actually going through like a real place instead of something that is obviously a video game level. Which is like, I think the artificiality is my biggest problem with the Divine Beasts.
See, with the dungeons, right, I would consider the dungeons in this game begin long before the point where it actually tells you there's a temple.
I would agree.
the water temple, for a good example, is like it only tells you it's the water temple right at the end, and then it gives you the 5 MacGuffins, or 4 in that case, thing to do. But I would argue the water temple starts from the moment that Sidon teams up with you and you fight the Sludge-like, because you have the entire underground Zora mine thing to explore, and then you've got the floating islands with the anti-grav, where there's like a whole bunch of puzzles and combat scenarios there that all build up towards. And while it is effectively a straight line, once you first enter there, it gives you enough sort of freedom of exploration that you sort of you have to sort of figure out your own way. Once you realise it's just going up, then it's really just straight. But it's still, there's a lot going on there. And I feel like a lot of people, because I've seen people complain about the temples in this game, I feel like they only consider the temples the point of the story where it tells you this is the temple. Which is just not the case.
I would say this should be obvious to anyone by the time they get to the ancient construct facility. Because that is the spirit temple. It literally has the music that progresses with each objective you complete. But it's not called the spirit temple, so people just say, oh, this temple's just a boss room. It's kind of lame. But no, there was a whole thing back there, and there was also the Thunderhead Islands before that. That's the whole experience. It's part of the experience.
Yeah, I think the Thunderhead Isles would be better if it was impossible to skip, because it's really easy to skip the entirety of it. But
I skipped the entirety of it on accident when I couldn't see a damn thing because the storm clouds were still up and I didn't know you could get rid of them.
Exactly. So but otherwise that would also be, I would consider that being a part of the temple. Like the way they intend you to do it is getting the Zonai like the Farouche outfit. And then doing that, and that's the thing that opens the temple up, and then you get the Thunderclap temple, and then that leads you to the facility, and then that leads you to the Spirit temple. Like, that's just one temple for me. Same for Eldin, I think, from the point where you fight on top of Death Mountain, in that really cool plane fight.
Oh yeah, I love that.
To then like going down and then exploring the depths with Yonobu. And then the actual fire temple itself. That's the entire dungeon. I think my favourite of all the temples, though, is the Spirit Temple. In fact, I think the Gerudo section in general.
You mean the Lightning Temple?
My favourite. Yeah, the Lightning Temple, even. I think the Lightning Temple and everything around the Lightning Temple is my favourite part of the game. Just because I find, like, there's a lot of fun story elements. I like what they've done with Gibdos in this game. Recontextualizing them as these sort of zombie moths, having to explore the desert area, and then the spirit temple. So it's like I keep saying that because I want it. I keep thinking of it as the Spirit Temple because it feels like the one from Ocarina of Time, even though it's not. The Lightning Temple is the one that feels the most like a temple. Like you're actually going down into tombs and traveling room to room and trying to solve puzzles. And this game's got like the mirror shield type puzzles from Ocarina of Time again.
And I said it earlier, but I'll repeat it now. It's such a like stark contrast from the rest of the dungeon areas in the game because it is so confined and like segmented, whereas the other ones are kind of freeform and you can do whatever and go around. You can fly over entire bits of it if you want. But this one you have to actually engage with it and walk around. And while there's some things that you can do to kind of cheese dungeon puzzles in it, like it feels the most restrictive. And I know people think that's a bad thing. People don't. For some reason, people don't like sort of like very designed things in Zelda games, but like having that there alongside everything else it's such a nice thing.
Yeah, I think that the temples all complement each other, and I think if you do them in the order that I think the game wants you to do them in, there's like a really clear natural progression in difficulty as well. As style, and it's just like because like the Spirit Temple, the actual Spirit Temple is like this big test of all of the different Zonai parts. Like every puzzle it gets to for building Minoru requires you to use like every single one of the different Zonai things, and it's a really clever test of what you've been doing across the whole game, basically. And that's like just a super well designed idea. And even the sages themselves, their special abilities kind of take the place of the items that you would get in traditional Zeldas. Like, we obviously talked about Sidon's being kind of shit, except for when you're exploiting it. But his ability to remove water is like the most dungeon-ass Zelda item out of all of them. Like, it's clearly got a special use that dungeon really wants you to take advantage of doing, and a boss whose entire gimmick is a Splatoon boss fight where you're clearing up ink and doing damage to it.
I really like this because I resent the notion that the game should give you all of the tools that you need to progress at the beginning and just let you do whatever. I like that sense of structure. I like feeling like I'm gaining new abilities as I play the game, and I'm not just like stagnant like power. Like I'm not just stagnant in power for the entire thing. I like the feeling that I'm growing outside of just getting better at the game. And the sage abilities offer a really nice solution to that problem too.
Yeah, I think so as well. Like, Yonobu, his thing being attached as like a cannon onto vehicles, and then you use his entire dungeon being built around minecarts, where you have to fire him off to change minecart tracks. It's just something that you can't really do until you get him. And so, like, even if you did discover his dungeon early, which is entirely possible because it's just in the depths, you can't really do anything without him. So it's good. I think the temples are way better in this game than they were in Breath of the Wild. And I would even count stuff like the Sky Island that you start on, and Hyrule Castle, and even like the depths was all like their own temples. Like the actual like build up to Ganondorf as you're going further and further down below Hyrule Castle is like effectively a temple. It's effectively a gauntlet of different sections, you have different combat encounters that escalate in difficulty. You've got Zonai puzzles you use. It takes away the sages at one point and makes you do stuff like that.
Yeah, I would consider that section the equivalent of like Ganon's Tower from Wind Waker and Ocarina of Time, where you're just going up and you're just going through a section of enemies. And I really like the fact that even though this is a big open world and you can go anywhere and do anything, there are these clear, like, sectioned off areas where there's a concrete progression of start to finish, and like there's actual like design, there's mechanics. They introduce mechanics to you, and then they take them to their natural conclusion, which is just so fun. The Wind Temple, the climb up to the Wind Temple, where you're breaking ice and bouncing on trampolines, learning that you can break the ice with your body by just diving into it, and you don't take damage. And then you see that same ice on the boss, and you realize, oh, it's shooting up its protective spikes and making a path for me to dive in like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, and that's so exciting. The moment where I fought Colgera was the moment I realized, holy shit, they did it. They made a Zelda boss again, and I'm like, damn, this is so good. Because 2 months ago, I went back and played Twilight Princess, and I was so enamored with the way that game handles bosses, because they're all this like large spectacle that doesn't overstay its welcome and doesn't have a long ass health bar that you just have to hit repeatedly until it's dead. And Colgera being this huge spectacle that also builds around one of the central, most iconic things from Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, which is flying. Just being entirely flying it's brilliant. It's the kind of ingenuity that just kind of felt missing from Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, I fully agree on that. The 4 bosses in this game, the 4 main bosses, are like much better than anything Breath of the Wild had. And Golgera and Goma feel very much like traditional Zelda bosses. Like Goma, because it requires the item that you get in that temple in order to get it to reveal its weak spot, which you then beat into. And then Golgera, for like you said, it's effectively the usual 3-hit Zelda boss. You either fly through it or you shoot it from arrows from below. But once it's, rather than narrowing its health down, you have to just destroy big parts of it. And it's great. Golgera is super easy, though, I will give it that. Which is also, I suppose, things of Zelda bosses.
I don't have a problem with that because it's just fun.
It's just fun. It is a lot of fun, yeah. No, I think the bosses in this game are really good. And then Phantom Ganon is like nice. It's just like a taste of what Ganondorf will eventually be, who's just a better version of Phantom Ganon fights. Although I will say, I still think the Phantom Ganon fight is kind of spoilt by the fact that you can just happen to run into it in the overworld with the Gloom Hands. So when it actually happens in the temple, which I also consider Hyrule Castle as a sort of mini temple.
It's got a map, so it is.
Yeah, it's got a map. It's got a boss at the end. So the only thing it doesn't have is a new item. It just kind of feels like, oh, I've already done. I've already beaten you many times now.
Yeah, I felt that way just with Ganondorf in general, as I said last time, actually, because I just fought Phantom Ganon so many times, and I learned all their attack patterns, and I fundamentally just kind of made the fight just. While I will acknowledge that, like, my reflexes and my ability to recognize patterns is part of that, it's just it's he fights in such a slow and deliberate manner that while yes, this is a good fight, like there's nothing fundamentally wrong with it, if you've done it enough, it's just kind of boring. Whereas something I would consider a truly excellent final boss is something that no matter how many times you play it, there's still always like an innate danger to fighting it. And you always feel like you're on the edge and you're doing your best to beat it with that kind of final boss that Ganondorf wants to be. I mean, like if you want to go for a spectacle, that's perfectly fine as well, as long as you do that right, which this game also does with the Demon Dragon fight, which is that's essentially the Golgera fight, but at the end, and it's also really fun there too.
That's definitely the it's the easiest of the 3 fights, but it's also the most fun of the 3 fights because it really uses everything this game is built on, the flying mechanics, to its fullest. But I really like the Ganondorf fight, but I guess I wasn't as familiar with. I'd beaten enough Phantom Cannons, but I suck at physical melee combat, so it was quite difficult for me.
Yeah, I acknowledge that part of my problem with the fight is definitely because of my experience. Because as I said, I don't feel the Lynels are fun to fight. But I know that they're like the most popular enemy from these games. That people really love the Lynels and feel a sense of accomplishment when they beat a Lynel. And I can see people feeling that with Ganondorf too. I've talked to people who felt that with Ganondorf too. I acknowledge that completely. I just didn't find it fun myself.
Yeah, no, that's perfectly fair. So, all right, now I think I popped my mic there. Let's do that again. Now, I think we've talked about everything that there is in the game to talk about.
Oh, yes. Of course, our review, I'm handling it, will be out sometime in the near future, and it'll be giving maybe more thoughts, maybe I might just repeat what I've said here in a more concise and deliberate manner, but we'll see how that goes. I'm currently struggling with separating how much I love the game and how much I did not like the story, and figuring out how I feel about that. So we'll see how that pans out. I'm definitely going to give it a nice review, but I might not be very nice to it in the review.
Well, thank you for listening all this way. So let us know in the comments what your favourite part of this game was. It's really interesting to hear different perspectives on it. All of our patrons are going to be on screen right now, the $5 up tier. If you want to know how you can join them, Patreon in the description below. Hit that like, put a subscribe, all the stuff that helps us through the YouTube algorithm. If you haven't seen our story discussion, and you've got another hour and a half that you just want to listen to something, go watch that. Play Tears of the Kingdom while listening to this discussion and the next discussion. I see that's I should have said that at the beginning of this discussion, in fact. Anyway,
it's just nice background noise to have while you're wandering around.
Yep. So thanks everyone for listening, and always remember to return to the source.